Hatim is like, I got people to call. I got 8 contacts. Got this covered.
لا مفكر انه عاوزيننا نشتغل يعني.
You guys, yeah, Gama, you guys are so Lebanese. You're like, hey, I got 8 people. I'm gonna call them. It's all
No,
good.
I was like, okay, no, I'm thinking there's like 8 people I can.
If you call 8 Egyptians, nothing will get done.
Okay, so hi everyone, we are back with the Nerdiest Show on the internet. This episode is on media and we are addressing our 5th volume. You can check us out at thenerdierstshow.com. And we are here with Nadya and Adil in Texas and Cairo respectively, as well as with Hatim here in the studio, and my name is Bassam. Alright, so the 5th book is titled Rock in a Hard Place, Music and Mayhem in the Middle East. Yeah.
By.
No, I thought these were subtitles, they're not subtitles. All right.
Who's it by then?
Who's it by? It's by Orlando Crawford. It's... Shut up, Nadya.
I love making Bassam read things.
It's by Orlando because I get these names. Crowcroft. It's by
It's
Orlando
like hooked on
Crowcroft.
phonics. It's amazing.
I like Crawford better.
Is it Crowcroft or Crowcroft? Khalid's making
I'm
fun
sure
of
he's
Crow?
heard that his entire life.
Whatever. It's published by Z Books in London in 2017, and I'll read a little bit about it in the from the back cover. A warm night in Abu Dhabi. What is this about?
Keep going.
A warm night in Abu Dhabi back in 2011.
I love it when you talk dirty to me, Bassam.
I love it too, but no, this is the end of the sentence. A warm night in Abu Dhabi back in 2011, period. Under the stadium lights, a 30,000 strong crowd wait for Metallica's first ever show in the Middle East. Many have faced untold violence, but for tonight, nothing else matters.
That's clever. Clever. See what he did there?
Bit too dramatic, yeah. This is the story of that crowd, of the people and the music they make in the back rooms of shabby houses in Beirut and Qatif, Damascus and Cairo, of illegal shows in Tehran and Riyadh, of songs that ousted a dictator in Egypt, of exiles that have ended in glory and in blood. Journalist and heavy metal fan Orlando Crowcroft spent 6 years in the midst of the rock, hip-hop and metal. I should have stopped at the rock. Let me say this again. Spent 6 years in the middle of the rock, hip-hop and metal scenes of the Middle East. Rock in a Hard Place is a different voice, one that is at odds with the Middle East of extremism, war and ISIS. It is a voice recognizable to anyone who has ever turned up an amp to drown out the din of the everyday. A voice that may help unite us when we need it most. This is the kind of language that academics don't use, so I found myself trying to adjust to like a different mode of reading. All right, so I will now retire this book from my hands and share it with my expert friend Hatim.
Yeah, so this is a book, like you're saying, it's actually by a non-academic. This is a person who's worked as a journalist, been covering this sort of scene, this sort of rock, heavy metal, hip-hop for like Esquire and Rolling Stone. Like our endorsement on the cover is from Max Cavalera, former frontman for Sepultura. So our chapters, we get a map of the Middle East at the front. It's just the names of countries. Other than...
Sorry, this is just so you know the new people on the show, Adil and Hatim. Around the 5th or 6th book is when the show begins to break down. Noah is already smiling because things start happening randomly. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so like other than the intro and the epilogue, our contents are just the names of countries. Lebanon, Iran, Egypt, Saudi Arabia. Chapter 5 is Israel and Palestine, and Syria. And that's all we have in the table of contents. So we do have other endorsements on the back, which I could take a look at. So I can feel like I'm contributing more at this stage in the. There's an endorsement again by Max Cavalera, by Sileno Z, the guitarist for Dimmu Borgir and Insidious Disease. Mick Wall, author of Last of the Giants, The True Story of Guns N' Roses. Brad Logan, the guitarist for F- and Leftover Crack. And Cliff Smith, an international human rights lawyer.
Adel? It's okay to pass. We did have people pass before. Yani you could pass if you
No, I'm happy to not pass.
Oh shit.
No, I'm happy not to pass. So basically, I mean, I'm interested in this book because we all listen to hard rock and heavy metal in the Middle East, and I'm curious about this view of the Middle East or the Arab world as this exceptional place that could possibly be essentializing, where, you know, heavy metal is more unusual than it is in, let's say, Texas or Louisiana. And I have nothing to headbang. It's either graying or falling. But honestly, like, I think this is a really, I'm curious about the dynamics, the complexities, the details about what it's like to live with this music genre as part of day-to-day life, because I grew up with it, and I know that it's, many of us may have as well. And I'm curious as to whether or not that experience is largely kind of universal. It's kind of like thinking about hip hop in the Middle East or country music in the Middle East. Yes, heavy metal and hard rock is fundamentally countercultural, and or at least in some forms it's countercultural and has been fought by regimes across the region. Not to mention various cultural cultural groups that kind of dominate, and majoritarian culture typically suppresses it. But at the same time, I'm weary of the potentialities of essentialism and essentialization of this. But I would, put myself in the realm of the somewhat skeptical. We have also a body of literature about this topic that's really quite dynamic. Mark Levine, for instance, has been publishing quite extensively about heavy metal communities in the Middle East from the early 2000s. I'm curious whether or not there's dialogue between this book and all the literature that's been published that's very, very interpretive, in some cases very analytical, and some cases very empirical. Or is this a book meant to sell an idea about the region that makes it seem really unusual and strange? It's the place where ISIS and heavy metal kind of dovetail with each other. How is it possible that you could be, a jihadist who loves like Anthrax? Those types of things. So I'm happy that it exists, and I'm interested in reading.
That stuff is more of like a hip hop lineage, the like living it big in Syria, like it's. Anyway.
Okay, Nadya, it's all you. I mean, everybody's looking at you.
Oh, I wasn't sure if Adel was gonna add anything or not. Okay.
معلش لا احنا ما صدقناش. انت عاوز تضيف؟
حمام ورجعت اصلا وانا بتكلم.
مش الحمام. يلا
نادي. معلش رايح افنتر ولا.
ايوه. Yeah, I mean, I think this book could be placed alongside a number of texts written that are both academic and written by different kinds of other professional practitioners about kind of, cultural venues or cultural modes of expression that push back against, particular kinds of politics. I share Adel's, point about a lot of studies. I have not read this book, so I'm not saying this is doing it, but a lot of these studies can veer into the essentialist, and it's also they can also veer into the whole notion of like, look at these Arabs, they're just like us, they listen to heavy metal and whatnot. But I think that the way that a study like this could be useful would be to situate it alongside different other kinds of cultural production and cultural expression as a way to show the creative ways in which different populations do push back against political, undercurrents and whatnot. So in that sense, it has that to offer.
Thanks, Nadya. I think we are okay. Anybody else would like to comment on the book? Assalamu alaikum.
Okay.